welcome to the webinar today. This is focused on smarter cloud rendering with wait and save on AWS Deadline Cloud. My name's Kevin Booth. I'm the Principal Business Development Manager for Visual Compute at AWS, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this session today. For those new to Visual Compute, we're essentially a specialist team with, as you can see from this slide, some media and entertainment credentials to our name. And we work really with studios across film and TV, visual effects, animation, design visualization, anybody really sort of doing 3D work and needs to sort of harness some cloud resources. And we typically work with those studios to get them set up on AWS for rendering, running GPU workstations, connecting a fast file system, and really sort of harnessing all of those together in some cases to set up a studio in the cloud, which is people operating entirely on AWS. However, today we're going to be focused on a new service. This is AWS Deadline Cloud, which has some features in it which are designed to help you save money when working in the cloud. So let me introduce our expert panel today. As you can see from this slide, we've got some AWS folk first of all. So Vanessa Inadomi, she's the product manager for AWS Deadline Cloud and actually the architect behind this feature, Wait and Save. And Vanessa's really been spending a lot of time working directly with studios to, I suppose, understand cost challenges and has built this feature around it. We've also got Andy Hayes, who's our senior visual compute specialist architect, solutions architect, and he works again with customers to help design and implement cloud rendering strategies. And Andy, you've been working a lot, haven't you, over the past 18 months or so with Deadline Cloud, and more recently to help them integrate Wait and Save. And then finally, I'd like to introduce as well Johannes Oehmen, who's the founder of Oehmen Digital Studio. And Oehmen are a systems integration partner specializing really in rendering pipelines. And actually, Johannes was one of our Wait and Save beta participants and has therefore done a lot of work behind the scenes with both Deadline Cloud and this new Wait and Save feature. So welcome everybody. I hope we're all well. We're finally here online. We're live. Let's dive in. Vanessa, I'm going to start with you first, if I may. Obviously, you're the product manager for Deadline Cloud, and I suppose a lot of people dialing into this call might be familiar with Deadline 10, which is our software version of our render scheduler. But Deadline Cloud's something new, and of course, I think you need Deadline Cloud for Wait and Save to function. So, can you just give us a bit of an overview, first of all, on Deadline Cloud itself and how that's come about?
Sure. Yeah. Deadline Cloud is a fully managed render management solution. It was built out of those that are expertise in the area. We have many of our current additional employees from Deadline 10 are able to contribute to this new idea. And really what it's designed to do is utilize those AWS resources that we know exist in the cloud and help those customers that are really interested in rendering in the cloud enable that really quickly and easily. So being able to set up in minutes and scale quickly. We have something specifically called service managed fleets within Deadline Cloud that really just allows you in minutes to set up just a simple render farm, which allows you to then access AWS resources, our storage, our compute, and you don't have to have any of that expertise in infrastructure management at all. We'll help you walk through that setup process. Again, in minutes, we want to be able to allow you to set up your farm and then be able to auto scale, maintain, keep those instances or that compute capacity secure. But that's all managed by us, not by the customer. So you're able to really be able to harness the power of the cloud with Deadline Cloud.
So Deadline Cloud's sort of making it easy for you to set up and render. What are the sort of the pain points that led you to add this Wait and Save feature?
Absolutely. So I think I'll start, I guess, just by saying that there's so much changing right now in the world of content creation. We've got our customers really wanting to be able to have the flexibility to respond to those changes, to have innovative practices and be able to try new things and be creative as possible. However, we also know that many of our customers work on very fixed budgets with their production or their projects. So it really kind of squeezes customers in an uncomfortable way of trying to be able to be creative and innovative, but at the end of the day, being subject to a budget. And often we found that that creative process gets stifled because they're so cost conscious. So we really wanted to meet customers where they were in their journey to the cloud with something like Wait and Save. We already know that the cloud in general can be a useful tool to help kind of maintain your cost efficiency because you only pay for what you use. That's still very similar with Wait and Save today, but again, at a lower discount than what typical customers are, something that's comparable to their on-premise workloads today.
Got it. So I think, every customer we talk to, is conscious of cost and the cost of using the cloud. And we typically talk to them about using Spot as opposed to on demand. And, some customers are new to AWS and don't really know what Spot is, but Spot's a cheaper way of accessing the compute capacity in the cloud. How does Wait and Save differ from your traditional Spot capacity and yeah, the fleet types which people would normally use and put on standard Spot? How does it differ?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, just like you said, Spot is basically allowing to use unutilized on-demand instances, those resources available. Wait and Save is similar in that regard. It's very unique in the sense that this is a service or this is a feature that's exclusively provided within Deadline Cloud. And we offer that because we do know that there are many render jobs that are asynchronous or they're not necessarily time specific. So with Wait and Save, what's slightly unique in comparison to Spot is that we offer customers the ability to submit workloads, say now, and then let AWS find the best time to run those jobs based on the available compute that's out there at AWS. So
Right.
again, similar to Spot, it's utilizing the excess capacity, but it's actually kind of moving things around or shifting the time around. And we do know that will require occasionally, you to have to wait for the job to begin processing. So in exchange for that wait time, we're offering customers that significant discount on the price.
Got it. And if let's say you're already using Deadline Cloud and you're rendering away on an SMF fleet, um, what's the process like to add Wait and Save in? Is it something you have to request? Is it something that you can just toggle on? How do you actually access Wait and Save?
Yeah, if you're an existing Deadline Cloud Service Managed Fleet user, it's as simple as creating a new fleet. We have an option that you can select with Wait and Save, and you're really off you go, and you're connecting that to your additional resources. We call them queues that are basically
Hmm.
your grouping of jobs or projects that you want to have. And you can have as many service managed fleets to as many queues as you would like to be able to run those on, say, different projects or different teams. If you're not a Deadline Cloud customer today, again,
Hmm.
still very easy. Our goal is to get you from zero to rendering in minutes, and you can go walk through our quick start guide in the AWS console. Once you're signed up in AWS, off you go, and you can create a Deadline Cloud service or service managed fleet and a Wait and Save fleet on top of that to off and run.
Got it. Thank you. Brilliant intro. I think that segues quite nicely to yourself, Johannes, because you're somebody that has actually done this, right? So you were an early access partner. You worked with us to sort of get Wait and Save set up. I think just in that mold, it'd be just interesting, I suppose, before we sort of dig into your experience of it, to just explain a bit about who you are, what Omen do as a partner, and what sort of value you add to somebody that's looking to try out Deadline Cloud or Wait and Save or anything that we're sort of offering today.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I am actually the person who brings clarity and ease to all the render management you will need to have and all the pipelining you do. So what I do is I have a deep expertise in especially Deadline Cloud integration. So I come from a TD background. So I've set up Deadline 10 ThinkBox render farms in the past, even before Deadline Cloud existed. So I've been in the trenches to actually do that. So you can see the name in my logo is actually partly Digital Studio, which actually
Mm.
still comes from the times where it was a Digital Studio. So we were doing mostly automotive renderings. So I've been there, done that, and now I actually switched to being a cloud and service integrator and work for customers across several industries from VFX, animation, games, construction, or automotive. So anything product as well. So, and what I do is actually I'm the person who takes a holistic view on what you actually have already, because most of the studios I work with have some existing solutions, some don't. But in most cases, it's great to have a holistic view first to see what steps we could actually do to change some of that and make their farms more effective. And actually taking the point from Vanessa, what she was saying is like, it's really easy to get started with AWS Deadline Cloud with standard tooling. If you use Blender, for example, and you don't have any several plugins, it's really quick to set up. But I'm the person you call when it gets more complicated and when you have plugins or anything you need to customize within your fleets and all your queue setups. And that's what I'm there for, to actually help customers do that.
Got it. So, it's interesting you sort of talk about you're taking it and building it into a proper pipeline. Was that part of your interest in Wait and Save? How did you actually get involved with the beta of Wait and Save in the first place? And what was your interest in investigating it?
Yeah, so basically, I think you reached out to me at some point, asked me if I wanted to join, connected me to Vanessa, and said I was like immediately up to it because I really liked the product already, but I just wanted to see what the actual wait and save means. So how much do we actually save, and what would it mean for customers, and how easy is it to integrate? So I was very curious to see that.
I mean, I remember um, after the beta period, you put a LinkedIn post on online, which generated a lot of buzz. That was part of sort of a benchmarking process, wasn't it? I know we've got some of your numbers here on
Yes.
screen. What was your um, process of actually testing this against some other render options, and what stood out to you as part of this benchmarking process?
So I was always convinced that Deadline Cloud is a good solution on the market, but I've never really tested or benchmarked it against other competitors. So what I did, I took a sample Blender scene, and you will actually see that scene in a demo in a few minutes. And I just took the same settings, basically rendered the same scene with the same amount of frames, the same sample rates, and sent them out to a Rebus Farm, which is a German brand, basically been around for years and
Mhm.
very popular, and actually are quite easy to use for most of them. But they always had the branding of like being quite expensive. And now seeing that, I actually can quite see that. So I did the same for Fox Render Farm. I think they're like a Asian-based render farm, which a lot of people work with as well. And as you can see in the graph, it just was more expensive to do that on AWS. And I knew the cost of a traditional Spot fleet and Spot instances have been around for years. But what really struck me was the number of the wait and save, and which was basically, as you can see, 94% less of what
Amazing.
it would cost for the Rebus Render Farm service.
Yeah, I mean, considerably lower, but in terms of cost savings are good. But did you
Yeah.
find it quite easy to set up? What were your sort of main technical challenges, I suppose, in setting up with Deadline Cloud, setting up Wait and Save, and actually firing off jobs and getting a successful response from those?
So I was actually always keen on like first knowing um, what the features would be. So maybe I will go into that bit before we go to the actual comparison of what I expect and what I got out from that. Just adding
Mm.
that to how different Deadline Cloud is to competitor solutions. And you can actually like read the table yourself, but what the general thing is, it is even it's a more professional solution for being compliant, for having an open standard, being able to build your own submitters or customize your own submitters. Most of the customers I know, they have specific submit tools already or pipeline tools they use, and they just would like to integrate that. But with all the competitors, they all have their own applications which are not open to change. Also, you can't have any plugins added to your renderer. So that's actually quite nice to use Deadline Cloud for. So that's just like something I also was always comparing to Deadline Cloud. But now, if we go to the next slide, if we talk about the challenges I was asking myself is what is the actual wait time? How long do I have to wait? And do my jobs get rendered? And how much is it actually going to be? And what I found out is that the wait times are quite predictable. You would usually have to wait a few hours if you submit it in the morning, but it would most of the time kick off in the evening and render until the morning. And during the weekends, it was usually even better. So you could see that demand lowering for everyone else. It would actually spike the amount of workers I could get in Deadline Cloud. And even the cost savings, another question I asked myself, how much is it actually? And fun story, because it was still in beta, I couldn't really see that in the Cloud Explorer. So at that point, I actually had to send out a specific job for wait and save at one day, and hoping it would like finish on 1 or 2 days, and I actually did across an evening and the next morning. So I had to check the cost explorer to see the actual costs. So that's now changed, but the cost savings were huge, and also the mixed fleet strategies was pretty nice. So the idea is to have 2 fleets assigned to one queue. I'll show that later on. But you can lower your cost and still have a quick turnaround on your frames to be rendered. And yeah, again, it was quite easy to integrate. As Vanessa said, it just feels like Deadline Cloud. It's just another fleet, but with more options.
Got it. And if you were engaging with a customer that wanted to give this a try themselves,
Yeah.
how do you sort of work with a customer typically? I mean, what's your sort of process of engaging with them and getting them set up to do the same?
So basically, we always start with a quick demo. I show what the product does, and show what can be done. Also, there's now a lot of tooling which is compatible to Deadline Cloud. So a lot of DCCs. Those are basically the plugins and the Conda packages being available for the solutions we have. So we see, hey, is this going to be compatible? But even if not, we can customize and build it. We have a scope. We see what's actually the idea. Do we actually want to migrate some of the render farms, or do we just want to see how it could actually work? So that would be a POC, an AWS of basically funded POC, which you could then implement. And this would take about 2 to 4 weeks. We'd validate with the customer and see if there are any issues. And like in the end, it would be like ongoing support if it's required. And maybe one thing I wanted to highlight is that in my experience, Deadline Cloud is for me as a platform which you can use to continue working on that. So you can not just only integrate any render task, but you can have any additional steps added to the workflow to integrate any AI tooling, for example, doing upscaling if that's needed, or any other task which you can basically run in AWS or anywhere else. So the open standard allows you to basically run anything you want to on the platform of Deadline Cloud.
Thank you, Hans. I think, it's probably time to see it, right? I know you've sort of prepared this with other customers, but I think it'd just be useful to take just a moment to sort of have a look through and see it in action. And I'm going to let you sort of take control of the screen so everyone can see what it is you're working on. But you mentioned POCs. Andy, I'm going to bring you in just quickly whilst Johannes is setting up there. I'm just going to take the screen. But yeah, Andy, if you were sort of talking to a customer about wait and save, I mean, what's the typical sort of customer that you speak to? What's their
Yeah, well, I guess in
general
a general
requirement?
sense, customers are looking to lower their prices, which is what we're talking about primarily with Wait and Save. But I'd like to sort of take a step back a little bit and talk about how Deadline can really help with that. Wait and Save is a part of a fleet type that Vanessa mentioned called service managed fleets.
Hmm.
And so if you're coming from like a Tractor or a Deadline 10, you might think that rendering on AWS means making machine images and setting up your OS and patching it and adding the DCC apps, the 3D and the 2D apps. And whilst you can still do that with Deadline, the notion of a service managed fleet does all this for you. So it allows you very quickly to provision machines to do your rendering or your simulations. So you can say, I want Windows, I want Linux, I want GPUs or CPUs. And it can elastically scale up these machines and bring them back down just by a couple of clicks in the interface, really. So when your job lands, the fleets grow, they do the work, and they shut down, go back to zero. And the thing that's super convenient about that is it's got its rich ecosystem of apps, the DCCs. So if you wanted to come in and render with Nuke or Arnold and Maya or Houdini or Cinema 4D and Redshift, the team have built out this beautiful sort of Conda repertoire of like all the different applications you can use. It makes it super convenient. So with Wait and Save, you don't not only do you get very cost effective renderings. It's what, like 3 or 4 times even cheaper than spots. It's very, very cheap, but you also get this environment, which means that you don't have to spend as much time in general to render, and it really kind of lowers that the requirements for you just to come along and as Vanessa says, just start rendering in minutes, really, which is a bit of a game changer. So many people are interested in like, how do I save money? But that is also like, how do I save time as well? So
This is the Deadline Cloud Monitor application, which you can also, for anyone who's interested, open in the browser. I'll show you how the application actually looks. I will submit a job in Blender, and I'll walk you through the structure and how Deadline Cloud works. So I'll first go into the general infrastructure of having a farm. So a farm is basically the entity which you already know. Like, you can have one farm, you can have many. Typically, customers would have one central farm and then would have anything, any project-wise being within that farm. But you could also have several entities in your organization requiring each having a farm. But first, I think it's good to start with one. So a farm contains all the entities which were mentioned before. So the terminology is queues and fleets. So queue is basically an environment where all the jobs are being shown, where you submit jobs to, and you can divide that into business logic as well. So you can have a queue per job, you can have a general queue, you can have something for all the archive works. And what I did here is I assigned fleets to each queue. So a fleet can be assigned to several queues. I'll just show you quickly. So the fleets are basically the entity to define your worker nodes. So how is a worker defined? So what's the actual CPU count, the memory which those workers should have, what the operating system is, and that's what we define in the fleet. And we can then assign those fleets to several queues. Currently, this fleet is assigned to the prod queue, but also we have the wait and save fleet, which is basically assigned to all of the queues. And it gets quite interesting when you just like add that fleet, and it would just queue in and work and contribute to the other fleets by just kicking in as soon as they become available.
so that's a sort of big
Go ahead.
departure, really, I'd say, from like Deadline 10, isn't it? This fact
Yeah.
you've got one or many fleets, and within that,
Yes.
you've got this lovely tree-like structure of queues that you could carve up to suit any way you want to work. A queue per person, a queue per project, a queue per uh, department or so, queue per render type, or even if you like. And then that's where your work goes, and then your fleets are just associated against those queues and start chipping through and doing the work that's needed against them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the big advantages we now have in Deadline Cloud. So you have more logic, you have more options to basically play around with all the configurations you have and optimize everything around that. Let me just quickly send out the job so we can use the time efficiently. I've just opened a Blender scene. So again, you could use it with anything like Maya, Houdini, and everything mentioned before, Cinema 4D as well. I'll just use Blender for simplicity. You can see we have a full HD resolution. We have 145 frames, and that's the general view from of what an artist would have if they would have to submit a job. So it's a submit to AWS Deadline Cloud button, which opens up a new pop-up. And here you can see the submit window, and you can define all the job settings. So what the submit window does in the background is like pulls all the information from the Blender scene, and now I've actually have something prepared, so we don't have to fill in everything right now. But I will just just type in something here. So we have a job name, which is for the webinar. Today, I'll just remove that. Can have a description, a priority again, then that's something you would know from the Deadline ThinkBox application. You can, of course, per job set a priority of which job should have which priority. If you have 5 jobs at the same time and they have the same priority, they will just be rendered after submit date. So the earliest would be rendered first. And the priority can be just changed to mitigate that. I'll not go through every single setting because we don't have the time today. Just wanted to show you a broad overview. Here you can see we have the farm being set. We have a queue, and the prod queue is now set to the prod queue, which is one of the 3 I've just shown you. So the prod queue have spot worker nodes assigned. I've actually pre-warmed some of them, so we have a quicker view on how the job actually renders. And that's the conda packages, and you just mentioned those are pre-packaged application packages which basically allow you to deploy those on any worker node, and you can actually create some of them yourself. So they're not like like an installer. They're already installed, and you just basically recycle them and repackage them again. And it works really well with other applications as well. Here you can see all the output actions, the render engine, which is being activated, and all the cameras you wanted to attach and render. Here you see all the assets, which of course have to be uploaded as well. So that also works across any asset management system. So if you have a scene which uses assets from all the other parts, from all the parts of your file server, it just collects them and detects them and all the textures or materials which actually require something, or even any other references you have in the scene. Here, that's something you can use if you want to. So you can have specific settings. If you have, for example, several fleets assigned, which are Linux or Windows, you could actually narrow it down to just select Linux, which you would want to use. Or let's say you have a job which requires a GPU being used, you can actually like set a value here and anything else. So that's actually quite nice. Usually I would just keep it on run on all available worker hosts, because my assumption is I've already configured it appropriately so that the jobs are being rendered as we wish. But the more complex it gets in a render environment, the more settings we can use. I'll now just submit that job. It will be sent to the render queue. Here you could ask again if you want to upload the files which are being attached to it. Sometimes it could be a lot bigger than, like for this scene, it's only 90 megabyte. What's actually really nice is if the job has been submitted prior to this one, it will detect the actual scene files attached to it. So the asset files which have been uploaded previously and haven't changed will actually be skipped on the upload process. So if you have an asset which is like 300 megabytes big, like an HDR file, for example, it will not re-upload again. So that's pretty neat as well. If you now switch over to the queue, you can actually see that it still takes time to kick off. Now we can see there's a total job, and we already have workers because they were just like pre-warmed running state and just taken their jobs. So we have 5 worker nodes currently which were on the stage on being pre-warmed. We now can see that the fleet is actually growing status. So there will be some more worker nodes coming up in 1 or 2 or 3 minutes. And we will now see that the worker nodes run. You can have several logs being watched. You can see what the actual stage is. The rendering is on. So you have a lot of insights into the renderings as well. So you can always see what's going on within the rendering. You can see a worker dashboard now. They've been idle for a bit, so it's only an average of 7.4%, but you have a lot of insights in what the fleet workers are actually doing and what their instance type is and anything else you wanted to know. And yeah, that's basically now the job is running. Now you can actually see there are more and more workers coming up. So we already have 10, now there are 14. So it spins up pretty quickly and you have a lot of instances joining.
So this is a fleet of current spot machines, and I guess you've got wait
Yes.
and save in the mix as well, do you? Yeah.
Yes.
So you're using
So
them together, yeah?
yes. So for this queue, I actually have two fleets associated. And my assumption now would be for now that the wait and save fleet wouldn't kick off because they would need too long to get started. But here you can actually see it goes into growing state as well, and it requests new instances. It might take some time. At some point in the evenings, for example, it might kick in immediately. But if the job, for example, takes hours to render, it will actually join there. And I've also tested this. So what I did is I used the same job I just submitted and submitted it a bit later on the day. And a few of the wait and save fleets kicked in, and they reduced the cost for that type of rendering to 20 to 30%. So you would have both the speed of being rendered quickly and the certainty that it would be done in the next morning, but also you'd be able to reduce the cost you would have with only using spot fleets.
So that's a way to manage your risk in the sense of, on one hand, you could say I want to capitalize on cost. So you could just have a queue designated just for wait and save. You put your jobs in there that you know could be diverse across a little bit of time. As you said, typically we're seeing cyclic activity, so sort of the evenings, the weekends, and when this thing kicks in. So you can use that and be very targeted. But if you want to have a consistent workflow, using it together too can still bring your costs down. So basically, I guess one takeaway would be that, there's no reason why you can't just have these fleets added to your queues. When they're there, they'll just give you savings. When they're not there, you can revert back to traditional kind of still low cost spot rendering.
That's right. And that's actually really nice. If you talk about costs, that's maybe one thing we can just tackle quickly. I see the time is moving on. Um, Something customers really like is to have the option to set budgets against specific queues. So, for example, let's say we have a project and our total budget to render is being estimated to $1,000. You can set that amount and it will be used to stop or immediately stop workers from working as soon as we hit 0 or 5%. In this case, it would be 5%. They would just start to roll down so we don't exceed the budget. That's a nice topic to touch. And also something customers always wanted to see, how much do we actually have to pay per job? So we wanted to know how much do we pay for a specific job? What are the ideas to actually have an overview of how we can in the future leverage this kind of knowledge to have better offers, all right? And to say, hey, this job is actually costing me X amount of money, and I still need to make a margin out of that, and I just like try to use that for the business as well, not only for technical reasons. Here, there's a quick overview only now for how you would save costs on using different fleets. So, for example, I also rendered the same job on an on-demand fleet, which is basically on-demand instances, which are uninterruptible, and they are basically starting, running, and they are just stopping as soon as you finish the job. Spot instances are kind of on the bidding platform, and they could be interruptible. I see around 10% of interruptions, which is very low. So even if there's some interruption going, the job will kick off again and the next worker will work on it. But you can already see that in comparison, even the on-demand versus the spot is a lot better in terms of cost. And I've sent out the same job again, and here you can see the wait and save again. It's very low, and that's something which is really interesting to see.
Cool. So there's lots of
Yeah.
ways that you can use these two together. I guess The other thing that I wanted to touch upon really is regionality as well, because you mentioned just now that the data is synced to AWS. So the idea about you having to kind of build render farms that are close to you is really something that you can kind of question and go, well, actually, where is a good place for me to put my rendering in AWS? Because we have, what, 38 different kinds of places around the world, regions we call them, where there is compute available. So you can kind of, I think you could, I'm sure you sort of guide customers like where is a good place in AWS to put things. I know from an EMEA point of view, Dublin is a fantastic resource. It's maybe not the most immediately obvious. If you're in London, you might want to render in London, but actually, it's good to talk to yourself and ourselves and figure out where is a good place to go. Where's a large region? So AWS regions, some of them are larger than others. So we can strategize with customers and figure out where's the best place to put render workloads. And when it comes to wait and save as well, there's also this question about or diversifying over time. Well, maybe if I know that it's cyclic, I could almost go and render in a place in the world where it is sort of the middle of the night right now, and sort of have more confidence that you can pick up on this. So I think there's a variety of different strategies probably you could bring to play to actually capitalize on like, well, actually, how can I use Deadline and use it in a way to bring my costs down? But so I know we're
Yeah.
short on time, so
Yeah, I mean it was a great demo. I've sort of been transfixed on it. I think you've shown it absolutely wonderfully there, Johannes. So thanks for that. I'm going to just dive back to sharing the PowerPoint here quickly because we've actually had, obviously a couple of questions, that cropped up, which I suppose are sort of fairly typical really of customers when they're looking at Deadline Cloud or just rendering in the cloud in general. First one's about licensing. We had the query of, look, I'm running 100 machines in the cloud. I don't own an extra 100 licenses. What's the I suppose it's a question for Andy or Johannes, but what's the sort of best practice really for handling licensing when you're rendering at scale?
I'll take a stab and then Johannes, you can fit into. I mean, you can bring your own licensing to rendering in the cloud. So if you have your own licensing and your UDA permits it, then if you have your Maya Arnold licenses, you can come along and bring them too. So whether it's your own fleet of machines, a custom managed fleet, or a service managed fleet, you can utilize your licensing. But we offer, burstable, if you want to call it compute, which may go beyond your licensing sort of boundaries. So in which case we do have a plethora of different usage-based licensing options for things like, Nuke and Houdini and Karma and Redshift and Cinema 4D, and it goes on and on. And then you can consume those licenses as you render. So you don't have to have your kind of render fleets curtailed by your license limits too. So you've got a combination, bring your own, but for spiky workloads, you can tap in and just use these on-demand licensing as well in the same way that you can consume compute.
Yeah, I totally agree. So most of the times the UBL, so usage-based licensing, is a pretty nice model because most of the workloads I've seen are, or for what Deadline Cloud is used for, is burstable jobs, right? So some of the customers might have an existing render farm and they just need an additional burstable option to execute something, or others don't like want to remove all the license burden, right? So it really depends. If you have a baseline and you need a specific amount of licenses for your business, that's fine and nice. But if it comes to burstable licensing, so example, if you want to buy 50 licenses for 2 or 3 months, it's going to be a lot of money. So you can actually save that and just use the UBL, for example.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And one for Vanessa actually here. So obviously wait and save. We've got the name there. Somebody's just asked, how can we be confident the wait and save jobs will complete in time when we've got deadlines? Have we had any sort of metrics or insights into customers using it already on sort of what the average wait time is and what that means for people? We talked about interleaving it with Spot, but have we got any data on what the wait time means?
Yeah, this is the most common question I think we hear. So very common, and I'm glad that it's asked. But I'd say, wait and say, while it is designed for, maybe non-time critical workloads, we still see wait times under 24 hours. And like Johannes said, sometimes it's just less than an hour or two, and those will get running. Again, we're just constantly evaluating what capacity levels are in your region. And then also, like Andy said, there's strategies around finding in different regions, maybe there's different capacity levels that wait and save could be appropriate for at given times. So we definitely, for production workloads, I think we still encourage folks to use that hybrid strategy. So using wait and save for maybe those test renders, some asset processing that you're trying to do, maybe even some longer overnight renders, things like that, but still keeping those spot or on-demand fleets for that more like deadline specific work. And even again, approaching that either together in one queue or having separate queues to help kind of again mitigate that risk a little bit. So ultimately, that hybrid strategy is what we see customers really benefiting from in terms of getting that cost savings when the timing is really flexible for them, but still allowing some control in terms of their deadlines when they really need something to be processed right away.
Got it. Brilliant. Thank you. I think that's covered those questions perfectly. Thank you. Okay, so we're towards the end of time, so I wanted to wrap up really with a couple of next steps on how you could get involved with both Deadline Cloud and Wait and Save if you think this is something valuable to you. I think there's really sort of three ways you can go about this. You know, the QR codes we've got on screen here will take you to our general onboarding tools. So this is your getting started video series and the documentation around it. So obviously Deadline Cloud specifically is meant to be so easy that you can just do this yourself. So of course you are welcome to navigate yourself to our websites and literally just give Deadline Cloud a go. Alternatively, you know, you may think that a partner is necessary to help you. You might not have the time needed to test some of this stuff yourself, and you just want to cut the corners and you know get the benefit, the best practices of somebody who's done this already. So of course, Johannes's QR code for Oehmen is there as well. So you know you can obviously opt to go and work with a partner. Finally, at the bottom, you'll see there's our AWS Visual Compute team link. And of course, we're open to working with you on POCs. Andy, just to sort of throw it to you, if a customer is interested in POCing this, when do you typically suggest that they get involved with us and then maybe bring in a partner like Johannes? How would that look?
Yeah, I think probably talk to us before you start anything. Obviously, trying to do this before production kicks is a definite thing to try and do. Set it up when you've got sort of the mental capacity to check it out and kick the tires and make sure that you can put your production workloads through it before you need to. But I think, you know, talking about the little things about regional choices and other bits and pieces of information, feel free to reach out to us at the early stages. You know, we can then make sure that we give you the best information. And if you want to go off and self-serve and play yourself, then absolutely that's fine. Or, you know, we love partners. They're definitely a great route to success. But I think feel free to reach out to us early when you're thinking about things, and then we can make sure that we're sort of looking at what your needs are and working you towards that goal.
Brilliant. Thank you. And you'll see at the top right there, I've put, you know, there's a 500 US dollar pot of cash available for anybody that actually wants to do a proof of concept with Wait and Save. We appreciate there is a cost involved, both in time and money in running projects in the cloud. So the credits we provide alongside a proof of concept will cover your AWS charges. And I suppose the nice thing about that is you can actually run production workloads safe in the knowledge that these credits are going to cover the cost. But then you can actually look at the real world bill. So you can see, you know, if you were running standard spot versus wait and save, you'd be able to see the differences there as if it was a real project you were paying for. So the credits are available to anybody that's attended this webinar and is interested in a POC. And of course, you know, that doesn't stop you working with a partner as well down the line. So you're more than welcome to get in touch with us if you're interested in starting a POC. So I think that's it for us. It was great to obviously have the expertise on the call today. I do appreciate everyone for dialing in and listening to us. So we're excited to help you test Deadline Cloud and Wait and Save in future. And I suppose the last thing to do is just thank Vanessa, Johannes, and Andy for your time. So it's been absolutely fantastic. We're going to follow up after this call with a copy of the presentation, a link to the recording of this. So if you want to look at it back or share it with anybody else in your studio, you can do so. But yeah, as I say, we're really looking forward to working with you guys going forward. So thanks again for your time, and hope to see you on another webinar in future. All the best.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kevin.
all.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Andy.
Kev. Bye.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers all.
Bye.